Hi everybody, welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. Well, in the wake of the horrific shooting that took the lives of 20 children and 6 adults at a Connecticut elementary school last week, the gun control debate is heating up. The question is, will public outrage produce a meaningful difference in the rules for how Americans buy and use guns, or will emotions and grassroots actions ultimately subside? Let's take a look at how some of the parents of victims are reacting and what they have to say. Take a look.
My name is Peter Reed. Here again as I was in April because my daughter Mary was shot and killed in her French class on the campus of Virginia Tech on April 16th, 2007.
My name is Tom Mauser. I'm the father of Daniel Mauser, who was killed in the massacre at Columbine High School.
I am Andrei Nikichuk. I am father of Bear Nikichuk. My son miraculously survived the shooting. He was in the line of fire. Every time something like Columbine, Virginia Tech, Aurora were happening, I would avert my eyes and I will still think that something will be done. But all those beliefs were shattered on Friday.
My brother was shot in a chaotic shooting on the observation deck of the Empire State Building, and everyone who was there would say with certainty that having more weapons would have only resulted in more carnage. The people that were there at Virginia Tech would tell you the same thing. The people who were there in the confusion and smoke of the movie theater in Aurora would say the same thing.
We need to have a conversation because we know that silence and inaction can be deadly. And in fact, it has been. Like most Americans, we're saying that enough is enough. We are better than this. It's time to talk and time to act.
Thoughtful national conversation about solutions to our gun violence epidemic. A conversation that's respectful of the Second Amendment. Another thing that I'd like to repeat, a conversation that's respectful of the Second Amendment, but cognizant of the risks guns pose to our families and neighborhoods.
First off, I think we all can agree it is so difficult to watch that. I mean, my heart, my stomach is churning. I mean, why, the fact that this exists, it's just so devastating. I mean, for me, it's so horrible that it took a tragedy on this scale to finally say, okay, now we really got to talk. Because every time we have a shooting, people talk and then things just subside. But now everyone's like, okay, the buck stops here, which is awful. I want to start off, I think a lot of us saw the head of the NRA speaking yesterday. What a debacle. I mean, we could talk about that forever. But I mean, their solution is saying the solution is to bad men with guns is good guys with guns. They want an
bigger
armed,
guns.
Bigger guns. They
Bigger
want
guns.
an armed police officer in every school across America.
And
Panel, how do
We
we
have that in New York City already. Why shouldn't we have it across the
We
country?
have an armed guard in Columbine.
Is that the solution?
Absolutely
James?
not. Listen,
Okay.
first of all, to think about what it would take to fund that.
$6.4
billion
billion.
Some might say that's
per
taxpayers'
year.
money spent going to good use.
But
Some might
it's
say.
absurd.
per year.
It was in the sort of environment we're in, where the party that identifies with the NRA doesn't want to spend any money on public funds, doesn't want to hire any more police officers, doesn't want to hire any teachers.
The irony.
You know, they don't want to hire any more teachers, but they want teachers to carry guns to school.
Right.
Right. I mean, this is I don't even know if we should dignify LaPierre's press conference with our attention.
With our
Doesn't-
attention,
It's so out
Well,
of
he
touch.
wanted to start a conversation, and he said we're not going to be taking any comments. I mean,
It's so
really,
out
I mean,
of
does
touch
that?
with where we are. And listen, this is different from some of those other shootings because of the age of the victims in this shooting. And so I'm sad that it took us to get to this point before we can have a real robust national conversation. But I'm also very glad that we are having it.
Yeah.
And I hope some really common sense gun safety laws come out of it.
And
about
I would
time.
hope that some of those gun safety laws and the common sense aren't limited to assault weapons, because we know that handguns are responsible for a majority of gun-related deaths in the United States every year, regardless of these mass massacres that do take place and that do grab the headlines because they are so horrific, and they're, with their multiple ammunition, magazines and all of that, that you can wreak so much havoc in such a short period of time. But the ratio is sort of up to 22 gun-related incidents, shootings that take place per gun that exists for self-defense reasons.
Right.
22 of them. It's astronomically inverted.
And I'm as hopeful as you are about limiting assault weapons, But looking at the power of the gun lobby, I'm sorry, I don't think a whole lot of movement's going to happen on this.
Listen, people are sick of the gun lobby.
We are 5% of the world's population, and we have 50% of the guns.
Right.
That is
Can someone
absurd.
explain this to me?
It's absurd. It means we're committing suicide. This is like a national suicide.
It's a microcosm of our military, which is actually stronger than all the militaries of the world combined.
Good point.
In the
But we're not military, we're civilians.
So
I know.
It's proportional, basically, is what WJ is.
In the United Kingdom, they had Dunblane, they banned handguns. They don't have any more handgun-related deaths. You can't just publicly carry one around.
It's very simple in my mind.
I will say, however, that, to WJ's point, obviously, there are a lot of people that don't feel the way that I feel about this. And within Florida alone, they had 1 million applications for concealed weapons permits within the last week or so since the shooting. The stand your ground law is bigger than ever down there. A lot of people are still doubling down. I mean, Wayne LaPierre and the NRA doubled down and went all in. And it's a bit ridiculous because when you're looking at this kind of a tragedy, to come down and say that teachers need to be armed when you know
that's what I want to bring up.
already had they already had an armed guard, they already had people that were there. It sort of begs the question of, is that really where we need to go? Do we really need to, for example, take the TSA option where everybody now has to take off their shoes at every flight all across the board?
Well,
but this is a much more severe case of that.
Right. Well, you
is
look
that
at
really the answer
analogy.
for our schools?
You put armed guards in schools. Where does it end? I mean, we should have armed guards in gyms,
Movie
in supermarkets, movie theaters, parking lot. I mean, well, think about it. Banks have security guards.
No,
so,
that's absurd.
So
and actually, a lot of banks do not have armed security guards.
Many do.
Some do.
New York City, they do.
Some
but
do,
outside
but
of the
not
city,
most.
you don't find that.
What about teachers carrying weapons? I mean, there's a town
Absurd.
in Texas where they do it. A lot of states are now considering it. They think
But
that
the
it's
Talk to
research
teachers about
doesn't
it, they'll tell
back
you
it
how
up. The
absurd it is.
people that have guns are more likely to have a woman or a child be subjected to gun violence without intention. I mean, accidents are more prone.
Okay, guys, we got to go to a quick break. When we come back on Fresh Outlook, we'll continue the conversation about the Connecticut shootings and the aftermath. Stay with us.